Hi there, a warm welcome to Too Hot for Radio. My name's Tom, and I'm joined through the power of Zoom with Stuart Reynolds. And Stuart, can you believe this is the first time in all the times we've done a podcast that we are matching?
Look at that, yes.
And it wasn't even planned or coordinated. For those of you on the audio, you won't be able to see that me and Stuart are both wearing matching white t-shirts. It must be the sun. The weather is making us do crazy things. And also, I've done crazy things. I've cut all my hair off as well. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time. But we are not here to talk about fashion. We're not here to talk about my receding hairline. We are here to talk about entertainment. And Stuart, tell us how we got to the topic that we're going to look at today.
Yes, I'm on the email list for Living Waters or Way of the Master site, Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron, etc. And one of the mailings I got, I think it was the 28th of May, was an article from Ray Comfort titled 7 Reasons Hollywood Hates God. And I have a circle of people who, if I get good material through, you're on the list, I send it round. And so I thought this was helpful. And so I sent it round, and one of the people on the list, on my group rather, on the group, wrote back saying how much he appreciated it. He also listens to the Too Hot for Radio podcast and suggested that this really should be something that he would like us to deal with. And my feeling is the same, maybe for a broader discussion about just, there's an old Hollywood song that, and the punchline is, that's entertainment, and it's an exclamation mark. But I think we're really asking today is, what is entertainment? Or if we're going to go, that's entertainment, it's not an exclamation mark, but a question mark. And the same time, on the 22nd of May, Wretched Radio, Todd Friel, and one of his 11-minute segments that he put out was titled Disney is Not Your Friend. And I thought it was interesting that both these posts had come out relatively close to each other, but really talking about the same thing. Disney is not your friend. Disney with, one of its throwaway lines now is that magic has no gender. It's beginning to incorporate some of its storylines, gay characters. It's not what we would call the wholesome, family-friendly institution that it was. But Todd Friel asked the question, why are we so surprised? Because Disney has never been a Christian organization. It is run, this is my words now, by pagans. And scripturally, a pagan is somebody that doesn't know God. And so it's run by pagans. It's run for secular objectives. But it gets back to the question that I often ask, whether it be institutions or people, why do we get so uptight at people who live in the darkness make decisions and choices of people who live in the darkness? Why do we expect anything different? Why do we expect anything better? But my contention and my burden is, as God's people, in what we regard as entertainment, we should be better. And we should be different.
100% agree. Why don't I read that email, actually, because that might help us as we begin there. This is the email that was sent through from a listener, as you mentioned. I'm only not mentioning his name because I haven't got permission yet. I will do before this is actually aired, but just to say, just in case you would prefer we don't give his name. He says this: Stuart, thanks for this. What Ray Comfort says in this article is so true. One only has to watch any film, soap, or serial with our biblical ears open to know this is the case. It's difficult to think of any one of the above currently screening that doesn't blatantly promote LGBTQ plus abortion, adultery, fornication, etc. Not to mention openly denouncing and opposing biblical Christianity. When I was a boy, there were still many of God's people who didn't own a TV, neither would they go to the pictures. Reverend Jim Graham point blank refused to allow a TV in the house. He called it the one-eyed God. Not that long ago, I turned programs off if there was homosexuality portrayed on the screen, but now I just complain. A lot maybe, but still all I do is complain. Shame on me. And none of this even comes close to taking into account the poisonous stuff that is being relentlessly pumped into our minds of our children by the likes of the BBC, Disney, and others. We, that is God's people, need to sit down and seriously reassess our position. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but this definitely is one for a podcast. Blessings. I think that's really well written, and I think I absolutely agree. I get that sense, and I feel similar to him in that it's something you constantly have to readdress, because we are living in a world that, you know, in a sense, a kind of the fish tank that we're living in is ultimately a pagan mindset. And we have got to recognize that we are living in a world that is, as a whole, ultimately opposed to the things of God. And so if we are spending what is average, I looked online and saw, I think the average adult in the UK is watching, is it 30 hours a week of TV alone and films. That's not including time on the internet or time on apps. So that's a full day in the week that the average adult is watching this stuff. And for teenagers, it goes up more than double. There are some statistics that say that the average teenager watches 63 hours worth of TV and video. And so we are being bombarded, and we need to be aware that what we are being told is so often not the truth. And I think Christians have to readdress our position. I wasn't around during the satanic panic days. I think you've been a little bit older than me, Stuart, will probably remember those more than me, this kind of real fear of music and films and entertainment. And I do think, from what I know of it, sometimes Christians went a little bit far. They were sometimes a little bit dramatic in terms of going out and having these mass burnings of DVDs, VHSs and CDs. And, I remember hearing this guy who said that as he burned his rock music CDs, he could see different colors come off it, and had presumed at the time that was basically like evil spirits coming off the CDs, instead of realizing that when you burn a CD, because of its material, it is going to let off different lights. But I think over the years, we've now gone from maybe one extreme all the way to the other side, which is presuming that actually most entertainment, most film, most TV, drama, YouTube stuff, Netflix, is either neutral or actually has various good qualities that we can glean. And so I've had in the past, I've read various books like The Gospel According to The Simpsons and The Gospel According to, various different TV programs. I had a book called Musical Journeys, and it talked about all these different musical artists like Lauryn Hill and Kanye West and people like that, basically saying, use their music, even very worldly music, to kind of teach young people about truth. So kind of gleaning something good from, maybe if you don't fully endorse all of it. And so I think we've gone from satanic panic all the way through to ultimately encouraging even our children and young people to watch, to listen, to kind of, to bombard themselves with these messages. And I think that both sides are dangerous, but I'm very concerned where we are right now.
Yes, I mean, and many times have we talked on many issues on Too Hot for Radio and used that illustration of the pendulum from one extreme to the other. I would actually maybe talk about a circle, Tom. I was thinking about this idea, what is entertainment, and even as far back in Daniel chapter 3, was it, with the golden image, and think of the profound part that the music played in that. Whenever you hear the sound of the blah, 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 you know what I mean? You have to bow down. Music is a powerful force on its own. And then also in the prophecy of Daniel, I think the lights of Daniel chapter 7, and this is then reaffirmed in the revelation of Jesus Christ chapter 13. We see embodied in a person the power of blasphemous words against God. And probably in our more recent time, we saw the power of oratory in Hitler, and how he would literally, and I believe demonically, spellbind his listeners, because that kind of communication, the spoken word, is powerful. And I think also that's the reason why, you know, Christ is referred to as the Word of God, because these are powerful forces. They're not equally powerful because Christ is overall. And then I got to thinking about in Roman times, in the Colosseum, the arena, and what they looked upon for entertainment. You know, centurions, you know, fighting to the death and all the rest of it. But then didn't there come a time when for entertainment, they watched Christians being fed to lions?
Mm.
And I mention all that in terms of our circle. How far away, Tom, are we now from, as a form of entertainment, somebody losing their life live on television in under the banner of entertainment, of competition? I really enjoyed the trilogy of, I think it's 3 books and 4 films, The Hunger Games. I thought it was an excellent story in itself, but the whole moral of that is what we're talking today, of what we can come to look upon, not just as political control, but as entertainment, but also the power of media, whether it be national media, you know, like the BBC or Hollywood, or just our own personal online media. Look how destructive that is. This week that we're recording this, what is this, the 10th of June, and look at the scandals that's coming out from the England cricket team in terms of what people have personally put out through their personal media. And so we're seeing how these things really do have consequences. My contention is that the media, particularly the likes of films and soaps, that kind of entertainment, let me put it that way, it does not reflect society. It molds society. Just this morning on Radio 5 Live, they did an article. So again, the 10th of June, they did an article based on a report from the British Board of Film Censorship. And they have said in their report that people on the whole swear more now in their normal language than they did 5 years ago. Now, my daughter Heather is a bit of a crusader on a lot of fronts, and she has written to the BBC over different issues, and she gets the same standard letter that you know, this language or this reference to Christ is because of, it's a reflection of what is normal in society. That's the standard answer. I don't believe that is the true answer. I believe that this kind of media normalizes deviant behavior. So every soap opera now not only has a prominent Muslim couple in it or family. Now, and I'm not, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just making a point, you know. Now there's more than one homosexual couple. Now transgender characters are finding their way in. And these were happening before these were these are normal in society now, but these were introduced in these soap operas, etc., before it was normal in society. And so my point is that these things mold society. They do not reflect society.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's a lot of truth there. I think ultimately we need to recognize that the entertainment is propaganda, isn't it?
Yes.
That everything that we watch is telling us something. And I find it really interesting that many people, including many Christians, find quote unquote Christian films really cheesy. And I've thought about this before. I thought, what are people's issue? And I think with Christian films, the message is obvious, is blatant, and is upfront. But the way they tell that story is not graphic. Do you know what I mean? So it'll dial down on, obviously, violence and sexual references and blaspheming. So the message is obvious, but the graphic content is in the back. But it's actually the absolute opposite with secular, non-Christian, pagan entertainment. The message is very subtle, but the content is very graphic. And the more graphic it can be, the better. And so you actually find that you're not really thinking, what is this saying? And, what is this telling me? And so I think, would it be a Too Hot for Radio without mentioning Tozer's, Christians just need to think. I think Christians need to critique everything. And one of the biggest dangers with entertainment is it comes normally at a time when you let all your guards down. Do you know what I mean? If you were going right now into, if you were heading into, a Muslim majority country, and you were having to go and preach the gospel to a group of jihadists who were holding guns, I imagine you would go very cautiously. You'd be praying hard, and you would be, just thinking and calculating how the best way to do this, what is the wise way to approach that. But when it comes to entertainment, we lie on the couch and we just absorb. We turn off like every kind of anything in our mind that would kind of critique or would challenge, and we just kind of absorb. And I think that is very dangerous. I think that often we act like we're not even in a battle. And I think the Bible makes it very clear that we are. I was thinking of that passage in Ephesians chapter 2, the first 3 verses say this: as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. And obviously it goes on to say, ultimately, but because of God's great love, he has saved us and called us. Amazing. But those verses, I'm not the first to come up with this. Many people have pointed out before that there are, in a sense, 3 battle lines. There's the world, there's the flesh, and there's the devil. And so we've got to recognize that the devil is, 1 Peter chapter 5, he is prowling around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. 1 Peter chapter 2, I think verse 11, where it talks about these, you need to be aware of the sinful desires that are waging war within your soul. And then you've got the world, with the dangers of, 1 John saying, do not love the world or the things of the world. And so I guess what I'm saying is, when we sit down to consume entertainment, are we thinking about the world, the flesh, and the devil? Are we realizing that we're in a battle, and the devil's desire is for us to be destroyed, to lose our faith, to lose our witness? And I know for me, so often that is rarely true, and I am absolutely challenged by that. And I 100% agree that what we watch impacts ultimately, in some ways, how we live. Let me give you a very silly example. Years ago, I used to watch this. There was a reality TV series called Meet the Barkers, and it was basically about a rock drummer who I really I looked up to a lot. Anyway, this guy Travis Barker had a massive mohawk, and I wanted to be like this guy, but ultimately I wanted to drum like him. Really, that's what I wanted to do. So I started growing a mohawk, and I had this mohawk, and no one really realized, you know, and I've got pictures of it, and it looked all very rock and roll. But the reason I'd done that was because I wanted to be like him. The thing is, the mohawk didn't make me drum like him in any way. It didn't make me look like him because he's a very different person. But it shows something as simple as that, as silly as that, you know, in a sense, a young adult can still, how much more for our young people who are watching YouTube tutorials of how to put makeup on, or, you know, I've bought these clothes from Asda and look what they look like. And you know what I mean? Like the hours of just absorbing that, the kind of the fishbowl water that we're living in. Yeah, I guess I'm just concerned that we're not acting like we are actually in a battle.
Yes. I mean, go back to the verses that you cited from Ephesians 2, and one of the phrases there is the prince of the power of the air. And some people have amplified that to say even the power of the airwaves. And I think that there might be something in that. I do think that in years past, the Christian film industry would have been open to the criticism that it was maybe a bit cringy, simplistic. You cannot say that anymore with the emergence of the likes of the Kendrick brothers and the films that they've produced, like Courageous and other things like that, and also David A.R. White and what he produces and directs, the likes of the God's Not Dead trilogy, with good actors in them, some of them very well known, like Kevin Sorbo, who, you know, he was better known for his time as Hercules, which at one point, at the height of that, was the most watched TV series in the world. Wow. So Hollywood says, but he's been dropped because of he's really been very forthright about his Christian faith. But what is coming from the likes of the Kendrick brothers, David R. White, Pure Films, really is, there's a thing that we watched just now. It's on YouTube. It's called The Chosen. Yeah,
I've heard really good things
about the Gospels.
I haven't watched it.
It is absolutely, now there's a bit of creative license, we understand that, but the people who have written it and produced it, you know, it's based on the Gospels, obviously. There's nothing there that I found offensive, and I think that these are all excellent pieces of work, which in terms of excellence, in terms of content and production, could stand up to the very best. So we don't have that as an opt-out now. You know, I think that Christians have real live options in terms of and some of these films, you know, that David A.R. White has been in are more like comedies, and that's good. We need wholesome fun. Interestingly enough, and this is where the slide, you see, Tom, appetite is an indicator of health, whether it's good or bad. But the more that we allow ourselves to be open to something, the more that we need to be satisfied, isn't that right? And if we aren't watching television or going to the cinema with our scriptural thinking caps on, you know, Leonard Ravenhill, he said that the entertainment is the devil's substitute for joy. We live in a world now that is just driven by entertainment. We are entertaining ourselves to death. I rarely watch television now, and we renew our TV license at the end of May, and I always have a discussion with Helen and the girls. I said, you know, if it was up to me, You know, I'd be quite happy not to pay for a TV license because I really just watch news and sport and some documentaries, nothing that I couldn't get elsewhere. But there's more than just me. But we do have, even though we're four adults now under the same room, under the same roof, not the same room, the same roof, um, we still have values in terms of what will be put up with in this home, and what will not be. But you see, there's a slide. Let me give you an example. The film classic Gone with the Wind came out in 1939. And the very last line of that film by Clark Gable's character, Rhett Butler, quite frankly, my dear, I don't give a, and the word is damn. And I have to say that for context, right? The Motion Picture Production Code Committee really labored about putting that film out because censors didn't want that word in it. Now look how far we've come and what is allowed now. Not many people know this, but BBC Broadcasting House in London, that was opened in 1932. And still today, even after its revamp, is the broadcaster's value statement. This is the value statement of the inception of the BBC. This temple of the arts and muses is dedicated to Almighty God by the first governors of broadcasting in the year 1931, Sir John Reith being Director General. It is their prayer that good seed sown may bring forth a good harvest, that all things hostile to peace or purity may be banished from this house, and that the people, inclining their ear to whatsoever things are beautiful and honest and of good report, may tread the path of wisdom and uprightness. You can still read that inscription at BBC House today. And of course, for those of us who know our Bibles, there's a reference there to Philippians 4:8 about whatever things are of good report and noble. Think about these things. We have a crisis. You know, there should be nothing surprising about what is happening in the world. I'm not saying we shouldn't be distressed about that. It's like I said at the beginning, why do we blame people in the darkness for living like people in the darkness? I think the scriptures say, 1 John 3:8, the reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the devil's work. But yet, how many Christians celebrate it and are entertained by it? So I know we're watching our time, Tom. There are some significant things I would like to say, if you would allow me. Just a few moments, and then I'll throw this back to you. But you know, there's an interest. I do think for all of our benefits and reflection, we could do well. We don't have time to read it just now, but I would certainly direct our attentions to Ephesians chapter 4 and 5 about the way that God's children should live as children of the light and the kind of ways that we should not be talking, etc. But there's a Psalm 1. I read this Psalm every morning, but I think it's got an interesting application, just the opening verses for what we're talking about today. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. I wonder how many would have to confess, if they were being honest, because of what they do put up with, that they are sitting in front of their telly or in front of their laptop in the seat of mockers, because of what they accommodate and excuse. In our home, if Christ is blasphemed, the program's turned off. No discussion. Would I sit and watch a program where my mother's name is cussed and trampled on? No, I wouldn't. Why should it be any less for Christ, the King of Kings? And there's some films I've watched, and it's the first 5 minutes. I've watched some good films, and we're 10 minutes to the end, and a swear word comes, and so I don't even know how it's ended, because I will turn it off. I will not entertain it. So let me. I want to. We really do have to think about these things. One thing I am convinced of, how can we suppose, Tom, that we can go from the television room, the things that we put up with, and straight into a prayer room or a worship service and know the nearness and the presence and the unction of the Holy Spirit? How can we know that? To me, we can't. We have to draw a line and say enough is enough. How many F words is more? Where do we draw the line? You know, people talk, and I've said it myself. Well, you know, there was just a couple of swear words. Some things I want to finish. Before I finish with this reading, I just want to mention some things. If you are, this is how we do it. When we're going to watch a film, if I'm going to watch a film, I'll say to Heather, you know, can you check this out? There are some great websites. Plugged In is hosted by Focus on the Family. You put Plugged In, that reviews films. It tells you about the storyline. It tells you about swear words and blasphemy. That's good to know. Plugged In, Common Sense Media, that's another one. It's not Christian, but it's helpful. www.movieguide.org is another one. And one that is in operation in the States at the minute, but not yet in the United Kingdom, is called VidAngel. And what that does, it's an app, and it takes out the swear words and the blasphemies and the explicit sex scenes. Perhaps for some films, there wouldn't be much left. Anyway, I close with this. A few months before I was born, my dad met a stranger who was new to our town. From the beginning, Dad was fascinated with this enchanting newcomer and soon invited him to live with our family. The stranger was quickly accepted and was around to welcome me into the world a few months later. As I grew up, I never questioned his place in our family. Mum taught me to love the Word of God. Dad taught me to obey it. But the stranger was our storyteller. He could weave the most fascinating tales. Adventures, mysteries, and comedies were daily conversations. He could hold our whole family spellbound for hours each evening. He was like a friend to the whole family. He took Dad, Bill, and me to our first major football game. He was always encouraging us to see the movies, and he even made arrangements to introduce us to several movie stars. The stranger was an incessant talker. Dad didn't seem to mind, but sometimes Mum would quietly get up while the rest of us were enthralled with one of his stories of faraway places and go to her room and read her Bible and pray. I wonder now if she ever prayed that the stranger would leave. My dad ruled over our household with certain moral convictions, but this stranger never felt an obligation to honor them. Profanity was not allowed in our house, not from us, our friends, or adults. Our long-time visitor, however, used four-letter words that burned my ears and made Dad squirm. To my knowledge, the stranger was never confronted. Dad didn't permit alcohol in his home, but the stranger enlightened us to other ways of life. He often offered us beer and other alcoholic beverages. He made cigarettes look tasty, cigars manly, and pipes distinguished. He talked freely about sex. His comments were sometimes blatant, sometimes suggestive, and generally embarrassing. I know now that my early concepts of the man-woman relationship were influenced by the stranger. I believe it was only by the grace of God the stranger did not influence us even more. Time after time, he opposed my parents' values, yet he was seldom rebuked and never asked to leave. More than 50 years have passed since the stranger moved in with our family, but if I were to walk into my parents' home today, I would still see him sitting over in a corner, waiting for someone to listen to him talk and watch him draw his pictures. His name, we've always called him TV.
Powerful stuff. Yeah, we will come into land in a second, just with some information about the future of Too Hot for Radio as well. I did just want to mention two books, and I was looking on my bookshelf before, but I can't find the book that I want, and I don't think I lent it to you, Stuart, called Worldly Amusements. I don't think I.
No,
So I've given it to someone else maybe, which is very annoying because I really need this book back because it is excellent. It's called Worldly Amusements, Restoring the Lordship of Christ to Our Entertainment Choices. It's by Wayne Wilson. And I think I'm right in saying that he was a lecturer at the Masters Seminary. I think that I'm right in saying that. Don't quote me on that. But it is an exceptional book. And it really challenged me. And it's big. It's really hefty. And I remember various things. I could talk about it for a long time. But let me ask you, Stuart, what Wayne suggests the most evil film ever created. Could you guess what you think it would be?
there's probably something like The Wizard of Oz or something like that. I bet you something that we didn't expect.
Something you didn't expect. Yeah, I obviously put you a little bit on the spot. He would say that Titanic was
Yes.
the most evil film ever. His reasoning was that it was the first film to have a 12 rating that showed full female nudity. And just thinking of what you'd said, Stuart, about how that now would just be nothing. I mean, that would be, yeah, it's in a sense, people wouldn't even particularly flinch, but the amount of people, because it was such a high grossing film, so many millions of people have seen it, so much money put to it. But he says not just that, but the whole depiction of sex, he thinks, will have sexualized a younger generation, and the impact would be very difficult to kind of to actually work out. And that was really interesting. Various things. He had other stuff. He was very frustrated at quote unquote Christian movie producers who were involved in making secular films. So he talks about Batman. Various Batman films have been made by this married couple who are Christians apparently. But again, when he talks about how many times effing, and jeffing and taking the Lord's name in vain, and he's like, these are Christian movie producers and directors who are putting that into people's minds. And so I would just really recommend that book. It's not widely available. Last time I looked on Amazon, you had to kind of get one of those second-hand ones that was really expensive. Hopefully someone would one day do a PDF of that because it was excellent. And the other book, which I have got here, is Growing Up Social. This is for those of you who are parents. It's by Gary Chapman and Arlene Pelicane. And basically the subtitle is Raising Relational Kids in a Screen-Driven World. I haven't read it all. It's my wife who read this and felt particularly challenged, particularly how much screen time we allow our children to have and what use comes with that, and just the impact of living on screens so many people do today. So those are two books to recommend. So yeah, just to finish, wanted to mention the future of Too Hot for Radio. Me and Stuart really enjoy doing these podcasts, and over recent months during lockdown, we have obviously done a lot through Zoom. Some of them have been videos, most still have been audio, but we really thought it'd be nice to develop this into more of a video podcast, but also something where me and Stuart can actually be in the same room together. I think that's something that we really miss. And so we want to announce that Too Hot for Radio is going to basically morph into a new monthly program we are calling First Friday. The idea is that this video podcast or video program will be released on the first Friday of every month, and you should be able to watch it on YouTube, on the Good News Broadcasting website, also on RTN, which is Remnant Truth Network. And we're really excited about the partnership with them. And so the idea will be to cover similar topics. We'd love to hear your take on it. We'd love to hear your responses and any questions that you'd like us to answer. Any comments about what we could cover, like we have done today, would really be appreciated. As usual, it'll be the same email address, info@gnba.net, info@gnba.net. It'll still be me and Stuart, and it'll be, as I say, covering some similar topics, I would imagine. We will also have a monthly book recommendation and a hymn or song recommendation as well. And did you want to say anything about that, Stuart?
We've already done the first one.
We have, and so that should be going up very soon. And yeah, we enjoyed it, and hopefully we will continue to grow and get more confident. But I think it's really nice to just be in the same room and and talk about these things. So we'd appreciate your prayers, and please do check it out. We don't want to lose anyone who's been watching Too Hot for Radio, and hopefully good things will come from it. So thanks so much for being with us, and please do come with us as we begin First Friday. Well, that's all the time we have here on Too Hot for Radio. Thank you so much for being with us. I've already given you the email address if you'd like to make a comment about the specific topic that we've been looking at today. I'll put links down to the article and maybe to a couple of those websites you mentioned, Stuart, for checking films out. I think that's a really good idea. And also, if I can find a link to Worldly Amusements, the book I mentioned, I'll also link that as well, because it really should get a wider readership. That's all from me. Thanks so much, Stuart.
Thank you.
See you all soon. God bless.